Hey, ladies and gentlemen. You know what it is. Urban Politics. I'm your humble host, Phys Ed Music. Let's get right into it like a car and drive because there's plenty of news to talk about going on today. Check me out. First of all, I want to talk about Trump's lawyers sent out a cease and desist letter to the RNC, the NRCC, and the RSC for using his name and likeness on fundraising and email merchandise. So he said, cut it out. Ain't that interesting? Well, I guess here's a guy who from jump said he's a populist and not a Republican, but he definitely did jump in the Republican car and take it over. But now he said, nah, don't be using my face or my likeness to raise any money for this Republican Party, this GOP, and some of these other people who are a member of that. And the reason is because they voted to impeach him, but we'll get to that in a minute here. So there's that. And I guess that's my next point right here. Man, he's helping people who may or may not have helped to impeach him. Nah, he's mad because these people who helped to impeach him, he knows who those 7 Republicans are who signed on to impeach him, and he's mad about it. Even though he deserved to be impeached, even though it was him getting his comeuppance, he's upset about that, so he wants to hold them accountable. He wants to make them pay for their betrayal of King Trump. So there's that. The GOP fundraiser said it's impossible to fundraise without Trump. He's popular. His policies are popular. And then they said if he wants to flip the Senate, he should be more generous with his likeness. Well, think about that. Here's a guy who has made tons of money off of his likeness, off of his name. So why would you think now he's going to have this, generosity come up out of nowhere to where he's like, yeah, go ahead and use my name and my likeness. It furthers the GOP. It furthers conservative causes. Yeah, go ahead and use it. Well, that would probably be the case if he were a conservative. He is not. He's a populist. And if you're a populist, you are what? About popularity and the popular vote. That's it. Not necessarily about the ideology of conservatism. So there it is. I've said that about the GOP from jump. You dance with the devil don't change, the devil changes you. So, you know what I'm saying? They're getting what they want. They made this monster. They allowed Trump really to hijack their game, to take over their party. You know, it's kind of the equivalent. Here's the analogy I draw when I think about that whole thing. It's almost like a person driving down the road, right? And they see somebody on the side of the road holding up a sign that says, I will take your car, right? And they pull over to the side of the road and they let that person get in the car. And then they're riding up the road about an hour and a half, and the person pulls out a gun and says, hey, I need you, the driver, and these other schmucks in the back seat to get out of this car. I'm taking this car. And the driver looks at him and says, what? You're robbing us? Well, I was holding up a sign that says, I will take your car. So guess what? Now I'm taking your car. So Trump has taken their car. It's his car now. The GOP, it's his now. And I don't know if he'll call it the GOP. I don't know what he'll do with it. But it is now his party to do with what he pleases. Somebody give Mitch McConnell the memo. But Mitch McConnell knows. That's why I said if he runs in 2024, he'll support him. What choice does he have? What choice does he have? The man came in and he strong-armed Mitch McConnell's party. He took it. He took it from you. He took it. So it's his party now. I guess if he's going to keep the name Republicans or keep the GOP, we'll see what he calls it. He might just turn it into Trumpism. Why not? He could. Yeah, them 74 million, 75 million people, they're about Trump. They're not about the GOP. Anyway, moving on. I want to talk about some landmark legislation that just got passed. It's probably missed on a lot of you all, but we need to pay attention, wake up and take notice. History being made right in front of your little eyes. On 3/3, they passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. That is major. Why is it major? It's a policing reform bill that would ban chokeholds and get rid of qualified immunity. Now that's the big one right there. That's huge right there. That qualified immunity is basically the thing that gets a lot of these cops off, because it's and I'm paraphrasing this here. You can go Google this if you want the exact wording of it. But basically, qualified immunity is saying that as long as a police officer is acting in the scope of his job, then no matter what he does, he was doing it towards right, so he's in the right, which I think is garbage. But that's basically his qualified immunity thing. And so whenever you're seeing these cops, like, kill people and get off, this is a piece of it. So this right here, this gets rid of that. That's huge. That's big right there. They said it's wide-ranging legislation that also bans no-knock warrants. That right there is what killed Breonna Taylor. Say her name. That's what did her in. That no-knock warrant gets rid of them. It mandates data collection on police interactions. That's huge. They were saying for a while there was no data on police murders. And then this right here is saying there needs to be data on interactions. Yes. Why did you stop a person? What was the conversation about when you stopped the person? So that's good. It would prohibit religious and racial profiling. Come on now. You know we need that, because there have been plenty of racial profiling. There have been plenty of religious profiling from law enforcement, unfortunately. And it would redirect funding to community-based policing programs. I've been saying, let's do that. Let's do that. If we would redirect some of these funds that some of these police outfits get, and we redirect it to social services, and I don't just say that because I'm in social services, but I'm just saying, if we redirected some of that money towards social services, then there wouldn't be the need for police. Okay, and this right here said redirected towards policing, community-based policing programs. That's a good idea too, because I've been a part of those too, and those work as well. These communities that are being policed, they need the police working with the community, not against the community. So that's what needs to happen here. And if they talking about taking federal funds and directing it towards that, well, I obviously applaud that. They said that they tried to do this under the Trump administration. Of course, it got stricken down. Duh. The Biden administration put out a letter to the GOP urging them to support this bill, saying we need to rebuild trust in communities, which starts with holding police accountable and tackling systemic racism and misconduct. Amen to that. Come on now. That right there says it in a nutshell. We need some healing to go on around here, okay? And there's been a lot of wrongs that haven't been righted. But let's try and right some wrongs around here. And that starts with holding police officers accountable, okay? So when you see a police officer kneel on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, he needs to be held accountable for that. And this legislation is going towards that. The Biden administration tried to write that letter to their Republican colleagues like, hey, why don't you get on board with this? This is actually, this is not a partisan issue. This is something that should be bipartisan. Because guess what? White people get misused by the police as well. That happens too, okay? So come on now, get on board with this. And none of them would. Not a one of them would. The vote was 220 to 112. Think about that. That's sad. 220 to 112. So there was not one Republican who voted in favor of this bill. Even after watching that tape. You know what I'm saying? Where George Floyd, like I said, had his neck knelt on for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. They still weren't moved by that. They weren't moved enough to say more than, no, we're going to stand with the blue. Blue lives matter. Really? Okay. But that's really telling of the Republican Party, and I hope people are paying attention to that. I hope people are paying attention to that when it comes time to vote. Anyway, Derek Chauvin, the man who did the kneeling on the neck of Mr. George Floyd, his trial starts 3/8. He faces second-degree murder and manslaughter charges. I don't know why it's not first-degree murder, but whatever. I guess we'll take what we can get. That's what we have to do around here. And so that's that. But he will fall under this new legislation that's been put in place, and that's major. That's huge. And I like the fact that they made sure to get that bill passed and then try him, so he can fall up under that legislation and hopefully be held accountable for what he did. Anyway, moving on. Now I want to talk about Democrats letting America down. Check this out. Cori Bush, if you've never heard of her, she is a dynamic sister. Her story is amazing. If you got a chance, read that. I don't have time to go into it now because it's too long, but it's good to understand how this lady is definitely one of us, and she went from being one of us to being in Congress, and she is about the business of the people. She introduced legislation that would have let felons vote. And all 209 Republicans voted against it. And 109 Democrats joined them in also voting against it. What is that about? What is that? First of all, I gotta stop right there. Why? Well, I guess I understand Republicans voting against it because I guess they want to be able to stand on their high horse and say, well, these are people who are locked up and they're locked up for a reason. Ergo, they're not worthy to vote in our election because that's just for law-abiding citizens and blah, 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 blah. So there's that. But these Democrats, I don't understand why they would do that because keeping it real, I put my political hat on. A lot of you Democrats are definitely going to be inmates. A lot of inmates are going to vote democratically. They'd be about democratic issues. Why would I say that? Most inmates are people who come from economically disenfranchised communities. Most inmates are people of color. Ergo, they've probably seen some financial hardship. They've probably seen some hardship, period. Ergo, they're probably going to vote democratically. So I don't understand why 109 Democrats would vote against that. I don't get it. The vote overall was 328 to 97. So you only had 97. You fella. People in government who even think that felons are worthy to vote. And that's sad. That's telling. That's something, isn't it? And I think that's kind of elitist. You know, here you go. I mean, because what other way is there to defend that vote? You know, what else could some of these people say? There's a reason they're locked up, so ergo I think they shouldn't, be able to vote. They lost that opportunity when they did whatever crime they did against humanity. That's garbage. Get out of here. They're still governed by politics. They're still governed by politicians. Why would they not get to vote on them? Why would they not get to vote for them? But this is also a piece of these politicians making sure that they retain and keep power, because the less voting public is better. The less people who are voting, the better, because there's less people who have a say in this thing that we call democracy. There's less chance of people have to sway my way when it comes time for me to give speeches and try to keep my job. So there you go. So, that is your elected officials. That is my elected officials. Anyway, moving on. Cori said, we will continue to fight. She said, we will dismantle white supremacy in all of its forms. I like that she went ahead and let you know that, real talk, that's what this is about. They want to, suppress the votes of people who are inmates who have been, locked up by the system. This is also a piece of white supremacy, making sure that they keep a certain sect of people down. So there's that. Representative Rashid Tlaib supports the legislation. She drew a direct correlation between denying people, especially people of color who are incarcerated, the right to vote. Say it's akin to slavery and Jim Crow. I'm paraphrasing all this. Like I said, you can go Google this and see what these ladies had to say about this, but they are so on the money right there. You can't draw a direct line to that. You know what that's about. Stopping inmates from being able to vote is just another way to disenfranchise people of color and people who are economically disenfranchised from voting. That's all that's going on there. That's all that's going on. So that is what it is. Udi Ofer, I hope I'm saying that right, Udi Ofer, who is the director of American Civil Liberties Justice Division, said Cori's own party let her down. We have so much to teach the Democrats. Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. But you know what? It's politics as usual. That is the reason I'm an independent and not a Democrat. That right there. That right there. Because that's right there. That's what that is. Politics as usual. You Democrats, every time it comes time to get in office, you reach out to the disenfranchised. You reach out to the black community. You talk about being against voter suppression and different things like that. But you know what I'm saying? What do you really do? You go out here and you support the legislation when it comes up to disenfranchise voters sometimes. You support the legislation when it comes up. You know what I'm saying? To keep people who have been incarcerated from voting. That's pathetic. That's weak. And that's not what people put Democrats in office for. But this is what they do. They play ball sometimes. So that's why I said I'm an independent. I vote the politician and not necessarily the party. Because stuff like this. Anyway, moving on. I wanted to talk about how Megyn Kelly was talking about race and education with Bill Maher. Now, when I seen that, Megyn Kelly on race and education, I said, there's no way on God's green planet I will agree with her. I agree with every word coming out the lady's mouth. Let's go ahead and talk about it. You'll see why. They were talking about, they were having a conversation. They said, she said that her kids were at a school, right? And they had a 3-week experimental trans education program on third graders. So these are 8 and 9-year-olds. Excuse me? Yeah, you heard me right. Then she was talking about how kindergarten kids, 6-year-olds, had to were told to write a letter to the Cleveland Indians objecting to their mascot. Seriously? 6-year-olds really are objecting to the mascot. She even said 6. You know, can you at least learn how to even spell Cleveland before you're supposed to be outraged about the mascot? And if you are going to be outraged, can you get that from your parents and not get that from your school? Anyway, she's talking about how children were being told they're white supremacists. How you gonna tell a little 6 or 7-year-old that they're a white supremacist? That is ridiculous. They haven't learned racism yet. Hopefully they won't learn it. But it looks like some people are trying to teach it. Saying there's a killer cop sitting in every school where white kids learn. Why would you say something like that? And that is not true. You know what's sitting in every school where white kids learn? A child learning or trying to learn, hopefully being exposed to something positive from an educator. It also was saying that white children are left unchecked and unbothered. Well, goodness, they're children. Shouldn't they be unchecked and unbothered? What is there to check? This is a child we're talking about, okay? Why don't people get that through their head? This is ridiculous. So let me read on. I'm not done. They said they're talking about I'm tired. And I guess this was a letter that went out to some to a preschool or whatever, to some young kids or whatever. Talking about I'm tired of white people reveling in their state-sanctioned depravity, snuffing out black life with no consequence. Go reform white kids. What? Hold up. As black boys. As black bodies drop like flies around us by violent white hands. That's ridiculous. Okay, now look, some of that stuff you just read right there, I just read right there, is that true? Okay, yeah, but not from a child. These are kids we're talking about. These are children. Why would you expose white children to this, any child to this? Why would you do that? You know, they haven't learned racism. They have to learn it. And unfortunately, they'll be taught it soon enough. Soon enough. But at that age, they don't see it. They don't know it. I work with kids that young. If you ask them about Mr. Eddie, you know what they say? He this old guy I work with. The fact that I'm black probably wouldn't even come in the mix. Because that's not a construct that they're even thinking about yet. That hasn't been put in their heads yet. Why would we be putting it in their head? They said there was a school in New York that gave out, and this is what she was saying, they gave out a panoply is what she called it, of 8 categories that all white people fall into. On one end was white supremacist, and on the other end was white traitor. Or white abolitionists. I don't like the fact that they equate them two things. White traitor and white abolitionist. Man, see, this is a side effect of not teaching history in this country. First of all, and I've talked about it on this show, white abolitionists were white. Karras once said it. A large sum of white people died for blacks, fighting hard against racial attacks. Yes, they were called white abolitionists. That was the thing. They were not white traitors. They were enlightened white folk who understood that the only thing separating us is color, and I shouldn't hate you because your skin is a different tint than mine. But we're not teaching that in school, so our kids don't learn that in school. Instead, you get some of these liberal white folk going way too far, wanting to tell these kids that you're a white supremacist or something, and you 8 and 9 years old. No, you're not. You're a white kid. You're not a white supremacist. Yet. No one's put that into you. You see what I'm saying? So, oh my goodness. So, I guess there was a school in California that had 8 and 9 year olds deconstruct their racial and sexual identity to figure out whether they were the oppressor or the oppressed. What? That is bananas. Why would you do that? Why are we talking to 8 and 9 year olds about oppressors and the oppressed? They're neither. They're children. Let them have their innocence. Why can't the kids live in a place of innocence and have that for as long as they can have it? Because these days we got the internet, we got music, we got all types of things that are coming for their innocence. Now you got to be in schools with it? And I'm liberal. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I'm as liberal as they come, I like to think. You know? Like I just told you. I'm an independent voter, but I'm as liberal as they come, I like to think. But this right here, this is not cool. I've worked with children for almost 20-some years. 20 plus years I've worked with kids. Why would you steal kids' youth like this? That's what you're doing with this. You're stealing their youth. You're stealing their innocence. These kids at that age, they're at a point to where race isn't a thing. It's not a thing. You know, class really at that age isn't a thing. Even at that age, at 9 and 10 years old, because I remember being 9 and 10, you have friends who have more than you, and you understand that, but you don't even understand why or what that necessarily means in society. Because you're 10, you're 9. You just like having that friend who you can go over to their house and they got all the newest toys for whatever reason. And they're nice enough to let you play with them, so you think that's great. That's called being a kid. Why are they stealing these kids' innocence? I don't like that at all. She was also saying that a study shows that this can bring racist thoughts to the forefront, which makes sense. They're saying if a kid hadn't even been going there in their head, now you're bringing those thoughts out, now they might start going there in their head. If anything, they might end up becoming racist because y'all been talking about this stuff at such an early age, put it in their head at an early age. You know, you set up that division at an early age. Oh, I guess it is us versus them. Oh, I guess his skin is darker than mine. So that's a sad thing. That's very sad. You know what? I just wanted to talk about wrapping it up, how my best friend was a white guy. You know what I'm saying? His name was Dusty. That was my dude. We were super cool. You know, we were kids. So I don't think he knew I was black. I definitely didn't think about the fact that he was white. And we were the best of friends. And that is what it is. Wanted to talk about my IPA of the week. Sweetwater IPA. Don't know if you get it. Let me get it there in the camera. Sweetwater IPA. The 420 strain. G13 IPA. This is a delicious little beer. It's about 6% alcohol. You know how most beers are 5% alcohol. This one is 6% alcohol. It's delicious. Got a little money in your pocket. Definitely want to invest in this delicious brew right here. That's a good IPA. Sweetwater 420 IPA strain, or 420 strain. So there is that. I thank you again. This has been Urban Politics. I'm your humble host, Phys Ed Music. Please subscribe, like and subscribe. Turn a friend on to this. I try and give it to you, you know what I'm saying, raw and uncut. Once again, see you around like a donut.